Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm just going to be going through the new features that we've released for this month. I'll just leave a couple of minutes for a few more people to join, um, and then I'll get started at around 5 past. All right, I'm going to get started. It should be a short PowerPoint today. I'll just get straight into the live demo. So today on the agenda, what we'll be going through is the new updates we've made to the Tenant App. So from the Tenant App, for your tenant's perspective, we've just made using it a bit simpler. We've basically designed a web version that is exactly replicating what they would get if they downloaded the app via the App Store on Apple or Android. And basically just for ease of use, and if people don't have the phones that have those app stores, they're still able to access the app and communicate with you guys. And then the second part of the webinar, I'll be going through a new workflow for emergency / short stay housing, basically allowing you to check out your tenants with just a much simpler workflow than you currently do. So what I'm going to do right now is just get straight into the live demo so you can see what we've been working on. So first and foremost, what I just want to go through is the Tenant App itself. Yeah, so it's a slightly different URL to the main system. It is tenant.arthur.online.co.uk. At the moment, in order for them to get to this site, they would have to pin this link specifically. In the next week or so, we will be updating it. So when they log into the main website, it will redirect them to the Tenant App. But just take note that for the current time, they will need to use this specific link to get in. So the first thing I just wanted to go through on the Tenant App itself, you can see it's got a very similar design what the actual one on the phone has. If you have downloaded it as a test or anything, you would notice. The first thing I just wanted to go through is the Kovic Profile. And basically what this allows your tenant to do is give you an update on their current COVID status. So it's a simple, as soon as they go in the app, they will see it just like this, but probably just rather than them. And they can just put in, it's literally just check boxes that they would fill in. And if I just move on to the main Arthur app, what you will see is it sends a notification to you guys saying that the profile has been updated. And if I go to that relevant tenant, Arnez, what it will also do for you guys is if you've got multiple tenants within a tenancy, because I know there's maybe some student nets where there's multiple tenants in there, it will give like a little mask on that specific tenant's contact, so you know which one has filed it. If you click the drop down and click view, you'll also see in the COVID profile what the actual answers were to those questions. Yep. And then finally, if you just click on your company name on the top left, yep, and you select email and SMS history, you can see the email that gets sent to you guys once they filled in the profile as well. So it's something similar to this, just giving the answers to all those questions. Yeah, so we've already set it up on all our clients' accounts that it will send off a notification and do that email automatically. And if you want to edit all of that information, if you go click on your company name on the top left and you select automated events, within the tenant section, so tenants, and if you click tenant Kovic profile update, you can see the one notification we set up here and the email we set up here. So if you want to change maybe the body of it, you can edit it and put in any other relevant information you need for that email or for that notification. Yeah, so in terms of just obviously based on current times and for you to get that information easier, we input COVID as a feature of Offer itself, just to simplify that process for you. So if you maybe want to send out a group message or an email to all your tenants, just letting them know that maybe you would want them to fill it in, you could do that beforehand, and then once they filled it in, you would get all the notifications as I've showed. So the second thing we've done within the Tenant app itself is, if I go back to it, so tenant.offeronline.co.uk, if you click on settings on the top right, you have a vulnerability profile. It's very similar to basically the COVID design, and it's literally just checkboxes so that you can just gather that a bit more of information from your tenants to just understand what their current state is. And so we've just got a few different questions here that we've just put in on you guys' behalf that they can fill in. Likewise, if I go to the tenants page, so Arnez is the one that I'm using today, and I click on tenants and view profile, you can see there's a section for that vulnerability within the details. Yeah, so just under the COVID one, you've got the vulnerability profile as well. So those are two new things that we've added within the Tenant app itself that just allow you to gather more information without actually having to do anything. It's all in the hands of your tenants, basically. The next thing that we've done within the Tenant app itself is, if I go to the main page and I select utilities, your tenants can now log utilities directly from their app. So this is one of the utilities I have, and I've set up the initial reading earlier today. And if you pull readings and press add, the tenant can directly just put in the value here, put in the date and any notes that relate to that reading. So that obviously saves some time for you guys as well. And it puts it directly in the section of Arthur where it needs to be, rather than them having to send an email or anything or put in a note. We will be doing an update in the future, which will also allow them to take pictures with that reading, so they can have the reading value, the date, some notes, and then they have that physical image of that reading as well, just to further solidify that reading they're inputting. But that should be coming also probably in our next release, which would be within the next month. Yeah. So in terms of the tenant side of things, like I said, this is a URL that they can put into their actual phone app. So if they don't want to download the physical Android or Apple version, they can just type in tenant.offeronline.co.uk and sign in, and it will look exactly how the actual app on the phone looks. And if they do want to access it on their browser, they can do the same as well. Yeah. So in terms of the updates on the tenant side of things, that is what we've done thus far. If there are any questions on it, just leave a question on the Q&A, and at the end of the webinar, I will go through all of them. Yeah. So the next thing I just wanted to show you guys and run through is a new workflow that we've introduced for a sector that is becoming more popular on Alpha, which is social housing / emergency housing. And essentially, if I just go into one of the properties I've created today, I will show you how it works. Yeah? So, where is it? Unit, I'll just pick one of my units. So I've already set up one earlier, but I'm going to run through one with you exactly today. So, add tenancy. So first thing we're going to do is just move it to short stay. Yeah. So within short stay, the reason why we're using short stay is usually for the emergency housing, social housing sector, they use a nightly rate charge rather than charging for the whole month or charging for the whole week, etc. They're charging on a nightly basis. Yeah. So what we're going to do is, if I change it to a short stay, I've got a subtype called social that I can use for this particular example. And within the status, I'm just going to move it also to periodic. The reason is with the social emergency housing, they don't really know when the tenant is going to move out. So it just happens on any given day. Yeah. So that means, as far as we're concerned, it's just a rolling contract until that checkout is performed. And I will show you, because you've released a new feature that also deals with the checkout. So you'll be able to see how that works. And just so you know, the short stay is, I'm just showing it from the social housing perspective because it's more complicated, but this also does work for a normal, if you've got any like holiday lets or Airbnbs, it will still work for that same setup. Yeah. So on the next screen, what you're going to input is a nightly rate. So as I said, on the short stays, they're charging on a nightly basis. Yeah. So I'm just going to put in £10. Yeah. And you're familiar with the bank account, deposit account. And on this screen here, you can see bill to, and in brackets, it says council. So what you're able to do is basically select a council that is going to take on that charge on behalf of the tenant. So in this case, I'm going to use Barnet Council as my example. And on the next screen, I'm just going to put in a name, Aaron. And so you've got your rent. So everything is pretty much similar to what you're used to. But with the emergency housing, it's slightly different when it comes to the dates. Yeah. So on the period, usually what happens is you charge from the 1st to the last of the month, but you're invoicing it at the end of the month. Yeah. So the actual transaction is going to be created on the last day of the month rather than it being created at the start of the period. And what that means is, if the tenant is to check out before the end of the month, that means Arthur's not going to create a recurring charge that you're going to have to go and void afterwards. Yeah. So as I said, you've got the period on a monthly basis, from first to last day of the month, and we're going to invoice it on the last day of the month. Yeah. Just take note, I'm starting it from August, just so I can show you what the actual transaction looks like on the statement first. Yeah. So next, I move to the last page. Usually there's no one-off charges because the tenants are moving in and moving out so quickly. Yeah, so it's literally just a recurring charge getting up that's going to generate at the end of the month. So I select Add Tenancy, and I go to the statement. You can see that it's laid in the direct rent from the 1st to the 31st of the month. Yeah, so the next one is going to create on the 30th of September. But let's say we've got a new screen for checkout. So let's say the tenants decided to move out today, which is the 23rd. Yeah, what you can do now is you can literally check the tenant out. So this is why I said it still works for holiday lets as well, because it's the same kind of process. Yeah, so you're going to check the tenant out. I'm going to choose my specific day, and whatever day my checkout is, it will update the amount of nights that we need to charge for. Yeah, so Arthur knows we've already charged for 30 nights, which is that from 1st of August to 31st of August charge. And then it's going to calculate how many more nights you need to charge based on when you check out. Yeah, so let's say I check out today, which is the 23rd, 23 nights, and I just confirm the checkout. Also, before I confirm, you can add any one-off charges, additional charges. If they broke something in the room or anything, you can add that as a one-off charge as well. But if you're happy with that, you literally just click confirm checkout. And what that does is it creates your final transaction, yeah, for your statement. So now I've got my first month's rent that was charged at this period. Tenants then actually wanted to stay to the 23rd of the month. So I've laid in my second transaction covering 23 nights. And I've got the total amount. Yeah. So if you think about it, let's say the tenant moves in on the 1st to the 23rd. The first recurring charge would have been created to generate on the 30th of September, but it would never get created because they would have moved out before the end of the month. And that's why we've done it in a way it creates it on the last day of the month. Yeah. So the next thing I just wanted to show you is, so I've got my transactions on the statement, and the next thing I just wanted to show you is if I go to the Tenant Invoices screen, yeah, and I search for, I remember, if you remember, I showed you specific council, yeah, so I can search for that specific council, and I've got all these different tenancies who are assigned to the same to the one council. Yeah, and what I need to be able to do is generate the invoice that basically hold all of these transactions on that one invoice. Yeah, so if I just select all in this case and click print, what we have, and if you've used the screen, you would be familiar with the different types of rent demands you can raise. So you can raise a rent demand for an individual tenant. You can raise it for a whole tenancy, or we can raise it for, now we can raise it for a council itself. Yeah. So in this case, I'm going to click emergency housing invoice and just click batch print. And what you're going to see, what I expect to see, and what you're going to see is one invoice that covers all the tenancies that relate to that one council, with all their transactions on it. Yeah, so the very top one is what I'm looking at. If I click preview, you can see I've got Barnet Council, the address, my address, and I've got all these different tenants. And it says what unit it's relating to, the amount of nights they've stayed, and the price of that nightly rate. Yeah, if there's any VAT included, that will also be included, and you can basically send that one invoice off that covers those multiple tenants, and that is what will allow you to basically, that's what basically allows the emergency housing to recoup at the end of that period, essentially. Yeah. So in terms of the emergency housing workflow, the main new features on it, in order for us to facilitate, is the invoicing at the end of the period, which that allows us to do, and then the checkout. I can see someone who asked about the checkout, if the checkout button works for other tenancy types. I'll just answer that now. At the moment, no, the checkout is simply for short stays. But if there's any reason you can give as to why it should be on a resi or any other tenancy, let me know. On the normal tenancy, if you've closed the tenancy before, there's a similar, but it's called closed tenancy rather than a checkout. And just so you know, we will be doing an update on the closed tenancy screen. So if you think there's anything we can add or anything that we're missing on it, now would be the best time to, I'll give you my email at the end where you can send me any thing that you think we should possibly add on the closed tenancy screen. But that is something we're looking at. The checkout screen was the first thing we did. It's an easier screen to develop, so we started with that. But we will be working on the closed tenancy screen that sits on the residential tenancy types. Yeah, so that will be coming in the future. The last thing I just wanted to note and just make clear for where we're going is Arthur is introducing a bank reconciliation page so that you are able to basically do the reconciliation with your info without having to integrate to another software. The ones that we integrate to are Xero and QuickBooks. If you do use Xero and QuickBooks or do want to, you will still have that option, but we're just offering another option for you to just use Arthur itself. And what we are doing is, at the moment, or I think initially what we're doing is we're going to have an import statement only, but we are in the process of basically becoming approved so we can have that live bank feed connection that will allow you to pull in those transactions exactly the same way an accounting software does. Yeah, so you won't have to manually import your data. And we currently have, if I just show you, I'll send the link out to you guys actually. On our latest blog, we have basically a promotion where if you basically just register your interest, we're just offering 60 days free to that live bank feed, so that you just are able to have that connection for free, test it out for a couple months and see how it's going for you. So I'll send you guys all a link to this page, so if you want to register your interest in that, you can. Yeah. In terms of the other little things, I'll just run through directly on the blog because they're not major. One of the things is a couple of months ago we introduced like a right-hand sidebar which has your latest tasks and work orders and messages on it. I think on my tenancies I don't have much on it, but let me see on Cole. And we've just basically done a few tweaks to it where you can just directly see those work orders and messages, so you don't have to click into it anymore. They'll just literally be all the last ones there, and you can add your new ones directly from the right hand side. Yeah, so it's just for you to have a better depiction of what's going on in your tenancy without having to click into each section one by one. You can just see your latest edition on the right hand side. And then I think the last little tweak we did was on the add tenancy screen. And that was just adding a bit more information into the right-hand side bar when you're adding that tenancy, so you can actually see what is going on before you save it. And then I think you literally just change the name off the top of that as well. So there's always about 20 to 30 small improvements that we do anytime we do a release. But yeah, the next release that we will be doing, as I said, in the coming months, will have that bank rec in it. And we really just want to give everyone the opportunity to use it and find out what they prefer, whether they want to use the Alpha Bank rec or they want to use the Zero and QuickBooks. So I would just advise all of you to just take advantage of that 2 months free. Even if you're using Zero and QuickBooks, you can see if Arthur's bank rec works for you better, or it's more streamlined because you don't have to run a sync, etc. So I'll send over that link, as I said, and you can all, I hope all of you just take advantage of that. In terms of the actual releases, I think that covers the majority of what we've done for this month. So if there's any questions that you guys have, to start throwing them out now. And if there's anything that I went over too quickly, and you want me to go over again, you can ask me right now as well. So I'll just go through the questions one by one. So Miller, you said, it's just wondering whether we can edit tenant. What do you mean by edit the tenant? If I just go back to the tenant, let me understand what you mean. So if you just click view edit, I'm not sure if that's exactly what you mean, but I'll wait for you to respond to confirm. For checkout button, does that work with tenancy type with short stays? Okay, yeah, so as I said, no, that only works on the short stay setup. I noticed from your recent mail out a push towards getting tenants to use Arthur in their browser instead of this app. Is this the case? Are you actively moving away from it? Oh no, Toby, no, we're not moving away from the Tenant app. It's just an alternative. So it's literally just a copy of what the Tenant app is on the browser. So if the tenants already have the app and they want to use it, that's completely fine. But it's really just another way for them to access it, because I know not everyone has the Android or the iPhone app store. So then it makes it more difficult for those type of people to use the app. So this just allows, it makes it universal, so anyone can literally use the app basically. Yeah. Christina says, on the live bank feed, will Lloyds be on the bank that will we accept the feed? I've heard of zero, they direct me to online. Okay, Christina, I'm not 100% sure. But what I'll do is I'll just make a note of it, and what I can do is I'll ask if that's one of the listed accounts, and I can just drop you an email directly to let you know if it is or not. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure which bank accounts we will and we will not have, but when I saw the list, there were a lot of accounts on there, to be fair. How will using or trialing the Arthur bank rec affect existing Arthur or QuickBooks accounts? That's a very good question, Toby. It won't affect it essentially, because it's like, how do I explain it? It's like if you pay off a charge on Arthur, it still syncs over to Zero, it still syncs over to QuickBooks, but it just syncs over rather payment rather than syncing over as a open invoice. So it actually has no effect. It's just the actual transaction syncing over that will be slightly different. But Zero and QuickBooks don't know what a reconciliation offer is, so it doesn't do anything. It will still sync over, and you would still have to do it on Zero anyway. So you could use both for the purpose of testing it. And you don't have to do the bank rec on your whole statement. You could just use a few of your tenancies just to see how it works, see what happens to Arthur, etc. Yeah. So to answer your question, it doesn't actually affect Zero QuickBooks in any way. Amy says, what's the URL for the Tenants app on the browser? It is tenants.arthuronline.co.uk. Yeah, it's on the blog that we released, and I will get that mailed out to all of you guys after. So it's right here, tenant.offeronline.co.uk. Christina says, also on the Kovic profile, we have a tenant that sent a response earlier this week. Can you clarify where the tenant has to use a different URL if they're already on the app? Oh yeah, so, all right, just to explain, because I think maybe I confused everyone. The web version of the app is exactly the same as the tenant version of the app. So if they've got the App Store version, sorry, it's literally the same app. It's just that they've got it downloaded on their phone rather than going onto a web browser to open it. And it's got all the same features. So if they've done the Kovic profile on their app, it doesn't make any difference to after where they've done it. Yeah, so it should work both ways basically. So tenants fill in the information about Kovic themselves in their app, but if they don't use the app, can we do it for them? Oh, that's a good question, Camilla. I'm not 100% sure. I think at the moment you can't because it's read-only fields. So you can see Kovic profile like it's read-only. So no, I would say you can't update yourself. But it is a good suggestion or question if more property managers would like to update themselves. I can raise that for you and see what they say on the development side. Eleanor says, my issue is the bank account with CoreOp doesn't support open banking, so I'm able to get direct feed into Zero. I presume this would be the same with direct feed for Arthur. Eleanor, I will do the same thing I did to Christina. I'm not 100% sure, so I will ask if it's on the list. But if they're saying they don't support open banking whatsoever, then I reckon they probably wouldn't use the people that the company that we're going with either, unfortunately. Other than the initial invite sent to tenants when they move in stream, this doesn't always. Christina, I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Other than the initial invite sent to tenants when they move in. Okay, maybe you're talking about inviting to tenants. If you go to preferences, so you click on your company name and you click preferences, and you select communication, emails, there's something that says include invitation code on outgoing emails. So if you have that on, anytime there's an automated email to your tenant, that's not signed up. It will prompt them to register. If that's what you mean, I'm not 100% sure. If it's not, then let me know and I'll change my answer. But I think that's what you're talking about. Christina says, is it a legal requirement? No, as far as I'm aware, I don't think it's a legal requirement, but I think it's just useful to know for the time that we're in at the moment for you. But I don't think it's a legal requirement at the moment. But it definitely is to improve the knowledge between you guys and your tenants. Any questions? Yeah, if you've got any general questions as well, I'm happy to answer. Feel free. Christina says, okay, sorry. Let me show you again. It is company name, preferences, communications, and then when you click on email, you have here, it says include invitation on all outgoing emails. And if you switch that on, that will ensure anytime there's an automated message that goes out to your tenants, then they'll be prompted to sign up, basically. Camilla, at the moment, we don't have a report for that actually, but that is a very good suggestion. So I will talk to the report team and see if we can build one. That shouldn't be difficult. So I will see if we can build a report for tenant vulnerability. Let me just write that down as well. Report for. Christina says, when might you limit access to certain areas? We've had a couple of issues. Christina, what do you mean by limit access in respect to who? To your other users or to our team or? Christina, we already have a feature that limits access, but it's on the enterprise package. So the feature is called permissions. I think I have it on mine. If I go to, I don't know if I've got any other property managers on my account, to be fair. But if I go to contact, let's see if I can do it myself. Yeah, so there's a feature called permissions, and you can set read or write access. But you have to be on the property. You have to be on the enterprise package in order to access that. And then it says, are tenants able to change their details? Yes, tenants can change the details directly on their app. So if any information needs to be updated, they can do that. Is there any other questions that are coming in? Charles says, how to run reports for payments in Jaicom. Can you be more specific? What do you mean by payments and charges to come? Are you just talking about upcoming rent, or is there something particularly you want to see on that front? Upcoming rents. All right, there's a few different ways you can do it. If I go to financials and say tenant invoices, oh wait, so there's a filter for it first and foremost. If you do invoices due today, this filter sets it for today's date. Yeah, I don't know, I've got no transactions on this list, but that's the easiest way to pretty much see what's due today. If you want to see something that's due in the future, then you can choose that date on a specific date, or you can give it a date range within your tenant invoices screen. So I'd say the easiest way to see that information is via your tenant invoices screen. So on your dashboard, you can just select any of the relevant filters, and it will take you to that page. Camilla says, how can you batch print receipts and offers in batch print invoices or print receipts individually? Are you being specific? When you say batch print tenant receipts, are you talking about the payments, or I don't understand, or are you talking about printing the invoices? Payments. I don't think you're not able to print the payments in batch. The payment is just what pays off the invoice. So there's no functionality we have that prints off the payments in batch. You can only batch print the actual invoice itself. Thank you, Christina, for your time as well. I'll send you an update on I'll find out about the Lloyds and drop you an email. Yeah, Camilla, no, there's no way to batch print payments, unfortunately, for the tenants. If you're talking about, so we've got if you can see my dashboard right now, we've got different screens where you can batch print. Yeah, so for the tenant, you're wanting to, well, from my understanding, what you would want to do is batch print the invoices, right? if you're a property manager and those transactions get paid off, you generate your remittance, and from the remittance, what you would do is you have a payments list, and on the payments list, I can batch print landlord payments, if that's what you're asking, but you can't batch print tenant payments. You can also batch print your contractor payments. So you can do landlords and contractors, but not tenants, because you're not really, unless I'm mistaken, but you're not really going to be paying your tenants. I mean, other than maybe if you're refunding a deposit. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to look into it further. So Kimila says, give them a document saying this is when you paid for this period rather than making them. Oh, okay. So, all right. So I think what you're talking about is a statement on account. So you're saying once they've paid, you send them a statement showing that they've paid. If that's the case, then yeah, you are correct. You can't do that in batch. I'm thinking in my head. No, you can't do that in batch. You can only let me think. No, you can't do that in batch. You would have to just do for that individual tenant itself. So yeah, no, you're right on that. You can't batch print the whole statement, unfortunately. I think for that one particular comment, I think I might have a workaround for it, but I would rather test it first and let you know than say that's possible. So what I'll do is, because I'm already going to get in contact with you regarding the report for vulnerability. So what I'll do is I will let you know if I find a way to do that as well. Yeah. I've seen a message from Charles. Charles said, if a tenant pays too much, how do I put it on? Charles, are you using Zero QuickBooks or using Arthur by itself? Because it does depend. It does depend on what you're using. Just using Arthur. Okay. So the easiest way to deal with this is if I just use one of the short stays I've created. So let's say this tenant paid 240 quid rather than 230. What you would do is just add a transaction and you would add the tenancy receipt and you would put in the full amount that they paid. So just say rent payment, for example. Yeah, and just choose the bank that it came from. Save the transaction, and then what you can do is then allocate that transaction back to the charge. Yeah, so if I click allocate and I choose 30, what that's going to do is pay off the 230, but I'm still going to have £10 credit on their statement. Yeah, so what you can do is use this credit to either you can wait for the next rent and then allocate that remaining amount to the next rent. Yeah, so the easiest way to deal with it is by adding a receipt for the full amount and then allocating that back to the charge. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Perfect. Is there anyone else? You've got about 10, 15 minutes if you've still got any questions. As I said, I'm happy to go through anything that you want, not just necessarily pertaining to the session you've had. So if you've got general questions that you mean to ask, you can ask me now. I'll give it about, okay, Christine's got one. If I'm charging a tenant for damage costs, what is the best category to use? All right, so it really depends on your setup, if I'm being honest, because people use transactions for different purposes. So it depends. You've got, my account's not the best because I've got a few bespoke ones. So you've got a couple options. You could use a sundry charge, which is just a general miscellaneous transaction that's used for stuff like damage costs. Or if a contractor is involved in that work, you could use a disbursement charge recharge, and then assign it to that specific contractor. Yeah, so I would say those are the two ways that you could go about it. So sundry charge, if you're not involved in the contractor, I would just use a sundry charge, charge the tenant for it. But if you're involved in the contractor, I would use the disbursement charge recharge. Assign the contractor to the other transaction. Just so you know, when you're using disbursement charge recharge and you tick this box, it will create two transactions, one for the contractor, and then either the tenant or the property owner, depending on who you're charging it to. Yeah, so you would put, let's say, 80 quid in this section here for the contractor, and then another 80 quid here for the tenant. Or if you're doing a markup charge, you can put in 100 quid or 90 quid, whatever it is, and make that markup. But I would say either using a disbursement charge recharge if you want to involve the contractor, or if it's just something you're charging tenant for and you're not involved in the contractor, you just do sundry charge in that instance. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Is that still the case if you use zero? Yeah, it's still the case if you use zero. Obviously, what I would say is if you're using zero, just make sure whatever transaction you're using, because with the zero, you know, there's the mappings that are done into the zero account. Just make sure the transaction you're using makes sense for your account setup. Yeah, so wherever it's mapped, just sure that the transaction you use is mapped to the right account for your specific setup. Camilla says, how can you create a custom invoice number format? E.g., if I turn automatic invoices numbers, it will generate. All right, on the invoice number format, if you go to, click on your company name on the left, click on preferences. Sorry, I'm clicking way too fast. Company name on the left, preferences, financials, and you see here it says invoice ref start or invoice reference start. Type in what you want your first invoice to be, name, whatnot, and the number, so like IMV001, and then that's how you would set it to run from that. It will basically increment based on that setting there every time you add another transaction. If I issue a refund for a tenant, Camilla says, is it only available for a specific account? No, this should be on all accounts. Company name on the left, preferences, financials. It should be available on all accounts. If it's not, it might be because of permissions. Maybe the main contact on your account, if I'm the main contact, removed your permissions from financials. That's the only other reason I would think it wouldn't be on your account. But it should be on everyone's account to update that, unless permissions have stopped you from accessing financials. Christina, how do you, if you issue a refund? So with the refund, and what I would say is, you would use whatever the transaction is that you charged initially, you would do a negative amount of that transaction. So if you charged for a rent and you're refunding rent, you would make a transaction of negative rent of the same amount. Likewise, if you charge a disbursement charge or a sundry charge, if you're then refunding it, you would do a negative amount of that transaction. So it's the same transaction type, but it's just the negative version. Camilla says, can you show us how to change those permissions? On my account, because I'm the only property manager, I can only show you the screen, but I can't actually change it for myself because I would lock myself out of my own account. But if you go to contacts, and click your team and you click the drop down, there should be something called permissions. This is if you're an enterprise. If you're not the main tax, then you're not going to be able to update the permissions because you won't have that right. So you would have to contact the main contact in order for them to give you that permission for financials. Yeah. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left. So if you've got any last questions, now is the time to push them through. So any final questions? You have the invoice numbers for different property owners. Oh no. Unfortunately not. Not automatically. You can have any invoice number you want, but it wouldn't be automated, unfortunately. What we do is have each house on a different division, and they do that. Yeah, no, unfortunately we don't support different invoice. Well, we don't support it happening automatically. So sorry for that. Okay, final 5 minutes. Any last questions? Anything you've been meaning to ask over the last couple of weeks? Okay, guys, I think we'll call it a day now. Unless anyone has a final question they want to ask. But if not, I will sign out now. I will send you guys all a link to the blog if you haven't got one already, so that you can, one, just let your tenants know what the URL link is for the web browser, and then also if you want to sign up to the live bank feed and receive that 360 days trial, you can do that directly from this page as well. So I'll send that all over to your emails, and for the individuals that I have to follow up with, I'll get in contact with you personally. Yeah. But other than that, thank you for your time today, guys. And if there's any other questions that do pop up later on, we're always on the live chat. We have support@arthurandline.co.uk, which is our email for general support queries as well. So feel free to get in contact. Yeah. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of the day.